All right, here he is.
Sarah.
Hello, Touré.
How are you?
Oh my goodness. I'm sitting here with you.
It's been a long time.
It's been just eons. It's been, what do they say? I was today years old. I was forever years old last time. I mean, I don't even know what time is anymore, but I know it's been a long one, whatever it is.
So, Sell by Date, you made a film about the sex worker industry. Why?
Right, like the sex industry. Why did I do that? You sound like my agent. We could be making so much more money if you just... No, that's terrible. I wanted to have, they call it the oldest profession,
yep.
right? I mean, prostitution, but like the sex industry more broadly. And it's not so much the oldest profession as the oldest conversation none of us are having, even though it's everywhere, right? It's everywhere. It's OnlyFans. It's the wholesome family who goes to a football game and then goes to Hooters. Like, you're going to have some sex industry with a side of those wings.
Oh, you're including Hooters within the sex industry?
So think about it. There is a line up to which we walk as a society that I would say is probably like lingerie right, strutting up and down the Victoria's Secret runway as one did back in the day. I feel like people would be like, no, that's not really. But if you're talking about exotic dancing, if you're talking about topless, waitressing, or like waitressing where your boobs are part of the gig, to me, it is a false separation to say, oh, well, if you're stripping, then that's different than, being an escort, which is different than being a cam girl, which is different than being... All of it is along a continuum of how we as women, for very good reasons, have learned to move in a system that commodifies our bodies and sex. Yeah. And so to me, I thought about stripping in college. I was like, it's ironic. I'm going to wear my Doc Martens, but very little else. And I'm going to be like, a badass. I'm going to shake my ass, but it's going to be feminist. I had these thoughts of like how to be an empowered woman and enjoy my sexuality and make money from that shit. And I was like, this, it was like at the time we were pre-Nicki Minaj, but Lil Kim, there was a clear messaging that was like, I can rhyme and also please to enjoy these titties.
Well,
that was part of it.
Hip-hop is like, either I am like pure and above that,
right?
Lauryn Hill, Queen Latifah, like I am goddess,
right? I am
goddess,
right. Or it's sort of perceived as asexual almost, right? That was the feeling.
Yes.
Yep.
Or I am straight from the strip club. Yes. I am straight from male fantasy of the side chick who can rap, who will do whatever.
Right? Coke can in your mouth. And here's the thing. Hip-hop was a big part of my lens, but I was very clear that Larry Flynt had nothing to do with hip-hop. He was the publisher of Penthouse, right? Except
he had a hip-hop magazine.
Except for that part. Sorry, Larry, I didn't mean to discount your achievements. No idea. But I knew that the Hugh Hefner meets Snoop aesthetic, right? Like, I think, at least for me, I always felt like it was so distinctly racist to hear people who were claiming to care about women and girls say things like, well, hip-hop is so misogynist, blah, blah, and ignore... Right? Like, I don't know, the entire rock and roll canon of like, she was 16, I smashed it. I don't think that was the word at the time. But, to me, it was like, wait a minute, let's all have all of the men's please take responsibility for a larger conversation about women, sex, power, and how, we commodify, how we objectify.
You remind me of a conversation I had with my wife before we had kids. And I remember saying, like, what would be the big deal if I took the kids to lunch at Hooters? Like, and she's like, that would be akin to taking them to a strip club. And I'm like, no, it's not. They're fully clothed. The wigs are good. They are good.
The ranch. It's just, what's the problem here?
Right? The whole tagline is delightfully tacky, right?
Delightful, right. Ironic, right?
I mean, and they do come over and like kind of put them on the table.
Flip it. I mean, I'm sure little kids are like, wait, which am I eating? Like, am I eating? Like, is it feeding time for me?
Or she's like, hell no, you can never do that. I'm like,
why? What's wrong with Hooters? This is perfect. I love that you had that conversation.
That you're like, no, that's on the continuum for
100%.
Yeah.
And to me, the fact that we want to shame women who are escorts or, you know, other in the industry in a much, if they have an OnlyFans account, if they, you know, are fully stripping or whatever, to me, I don't know, the only difference is chicken.
See, there's little ways that, let's say, that world pokes into the rest of the world, right? For a lot of men my age, seeing Princess Leia like chained up, that was BDSM,
about that.
And we didn't know what we were watching, but we were deeply moved. Like, what the hell is that? Like a hot girl chained up. Like, I love this, and I don't even know why. I don't know what to call it. And that's like the first time a lot of us had encountered that.
That's so
and like stored it away, and like maybe I want to revisit that. Like,
let's bookmark this for later. So what's so funny? So I'm just young enough that so my dad, I remember it was like, we're going to wait online and watch the premiere, and I was like a baby or something, and, you know, I think, the parenting issues aside, I sort of missed the whole Princess Leia as sex object thing until recently when I was doing research into, you know, really basic things. For example, Barbie. I didn't know the Barbie doll, of which I had many, was based on a Lily doll. Lily was a German prostitute in World War II. And the reason Barbie is giving all of this has everything to do with sex work or, you know, whatever. There's so many terms and it's so complicated. And even as I speak, I'm like, please don't be mad at me, my sex worker friends who I love. And you know I love you and I trust you, but
part of the undercurrent of sell by date is this argument that's going on. People who are not in sex work saying, why are you telling the story? People who are in sex work saying, why are you telling our story? So you're kind of getting it from both sides. But then others saying, thank you for telling. So you're sort of getting every reaction from every community.
Yes, it was a workout. Like, I just sort of felt like, okay, this is the existential equivalent of, like, you know, Pilates. It just was like, I am fascinated by this topic because it's adjacent to me in ways that folks will find out when they see the film. But I really kind of wasn't aware, and I think that's what's been so fascinating to me as the director of the film, but also being in it. I had my own kind of inside and outside relationship to this topic, and people keep reaching out to me now that they're seeing it and saying, my wife just told me she stripped in college. I had no idea. She never mentioned it. We've been married for X years. And she just never thought she should mention it, and now we're talking about it. And it's not, my wife is, you know, like, I think what I hope the movie helps do is really help us see how much we stigmatize and slut shame women for doing what men have, you know, like delighted in and been celebrated for forever, right? So that's one piece of it. If nothing else, if we just stop, I was on a podcast with a woman who's a French speaker, and she was saying, putain, that word means whore, and it is the blanket curse word for anything that goes wrong. If your car breaks down, putain, putain, putain. In Spanish, puta, puta, puta. Like, basically, if you want to say something is terrible, you say whore. And I would love us to stop fucking doing that.
And you point out in the film how sex workers, aka whores, can be killed, and people look at it like
it's nothing.
It's kind of okay.
Kind of funny.
And they're kind of vulnerable
they're
to getting killed. It seems like that's the sort of person who's killable in some bizarre way.
Very killable. And there's a whole kind of canon of films, literature, examples of women who, for whatever reason, have chosen or have ended up in the life becoming these totally expendable, you know, side plots, or like, I mean, I remember watching The Sopranos in the, whenever it was, the 2000s, and I think a woman gets, it's so violent, it's so incredibly horrific, and yet we're supposed to empathize with Tony, or whoever it was that was doing the choking. I just remember thinking, something's really wrong here, that we don't see the humanity of this person, even in a narrative form. We're sort of like,
Well, you made me think about the Wayne Brady episode of Chappelle's show, where he's like, is Wayne Brady going to have to choke a bitch? Which he didn't want to say.
Right.
But it's like the line that people like remember.
It became Wayne Brady's whole.
Yeah.
Don't make Wayne Brady have to choke a bitch. And the thing is, it was funny. I hate to say this.
Yes, but I can be mean and threaten violence to a sex worker who's just saying, I haven't gotten that many Johns tonight, and it's funny.
Right. It was funny. I laughed at the time. I will say I remember being uncomfortable. I remember there was some part of me that was like, this is really painful. I see the funny in it, but it's painful. And I'll make another thing that I actually didn't get to put into the film. It was in the play, but when people were playing a ton of GTA, Grand Theft Auto, a certain generation of boys especially, but everybody was playing this video game, you got all these points for finding and killing prostitutes. And it was a huge part of the game, and kids are like 9, 10, killing hookers and making points. And I just thought something is off, that we claim to be such a puritanical society. I'm not proud of the puritanical thing, but it's very like, nobody can see a nipple ever, anywhere.
Never.
But you can, as somebody says it in the movie, you can carjack, you can, murder women with impunity as long as she's a dirty whore.
So you go through this journey, you're kind of asking yourself and others, is sex work empowering or exploitative?
Right.
So where do you, and it's obviously some of both, but do you land more on one side than the other?
Yeah, we say in the film that I'm kind of a hovercraft. Like my goal is to not plant a flag anywhere.
Okay.
Because I don't fucking, here's the thing. I learned so much interviewing the people who I did for the play, and then in the backlash that I experienced when it was announced that the film was going to be made, there was so much, I think, very justified fear and rage on the part of women in the sex industry saying, wait a minute, you're just going to make another, limiting, negative, or whatever. You're just going to malign us like everybody else does and not include us in the process. And I wanted to be like, you obviously don't know me.
That's not what I do.
You haven't seen the play. It's not what I do.
Your whole thing is research, talking to people, getting their stories out through your body.
100%. And in the case of this film, all I was trying to do is get my own story out through my body. So part of me was like, hey, everybody fall the fuck back.
Sure.
But I also understood that if you have been through hell of watching yourself on screen, Wayne Brady, blah, 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 of course your back is up and you're worried and you're concerned. And here's what I'll say. This topic needs like 1,000 seminars at 1,000 universities forever, just for us to begin to unpack what I think is really the 30,000-foot view, which is capitalism, racism, everything we were in the streets protesting, all the ways in which we understand devaluing George Floyd's life to the point where we let, I was thinking, I'm from New York and I'm back here with you, and New York has a military, the police department is bigger than most armies of most countries.
That's right.
We have a system where we allow such devaluing of black lives in particular, that we all flooded the streets, the whole world. To me, if we could have an honest conversation about the sex industry, sex work, prostitution, whatever we want to call it, we would see that the racial issues, the poverty issues, the same misogyny we're seeing around Roe v. Wade, it's all in this one issue. It's sort of the canary in the coal mine for everything else. But because we look away, and everybody's like, oh, I don't do that. I want to be like, Pornhub is on your browser. Like, you know what I mean? But we don't want to talk about it. And so we're missing this amazing opportunity, I think, to have a really honest conversation that would bring us all closer to each other.